Money. It's so funny you say that about the money for Tobias Harris, because when the Pistons signed him to a 2-year, $52 million
52. Yeah.
Mhm.
contract, I was on the end of being like, this is insane. And
Yeah.
almost immediately, I was like, actually, this guy's kind of worth all that money. He's been
Yeah.
so good for Detroit. You brought up like the 14.7 boards, which on this team specifically, because offense is hard to come by, has been like a staggering benefit. And just like his adult presence. Plus, every time I watch Hustle, I get to see Tobias Harris look great in that, and I love him in
Yep.
that movie. Fun stuff from him there. But like with the Grimes situation, Grimes was somebody the Pistons really wanted, or Pistons fans really wanted to work out last year, because defensive dog, from what we
Mhm.
heard, we didn't really get to see. He was a little bit injured. I'm curious about the defense in Philly. And he's supposed to be a 3-ball shooter, didn't do that in Detroit. And then there was some money dispute, it sounds like, and he didn't come back. And the money with guards seems to be like pretty fascinating in general. The money with players in general seems to be pretty fascinating,
Mhm.
which is a topic we'll get into in the near future here. But for this time in March, if he keeps balling out, maybe he gets some paper next year. Who knows? Maybe he'll be in Philly. Who knows? It seems like, to me, and this is just an outsider's perspective, Philly's pretty focused on, they've got their front court of the future, right? And like you were saying, they got to find
Backcourt.
their center. Sorry, backcourt, correct. No, I'm talking about Adem Bona as the front court of the future. That's
That's
what
right.
I'm trying to say. I do like Bona. I think he's a bona fide not bad at defense.
Whoa.
But yeah, toss that in there. He's just lacking some other stuff. Going into the playoffs, into the offseason, you wrote a piece about how, because Cade Cunningham is injured, maybe it would be good fortune for Philadelphia to end up as the 8th seed instead of where they're at as the 6th seed. Both these teams have kind of been tumbling a little bit, treading water a little bit. I guess give us the breakdown on how you feel these teams match up right here, in the direction that Philadelphia could go in the offseason, based on what you think will happen in the playoffs.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, it really just comes down to health for both teams. I mean, the Cade lung issue that came kind of out of nowhere. I mean, they said he left with back spasms, and then 2 days later, it's like, oh, just kidding. It's a collapsed lung. So that was unwelcome news. And yeah, I mean, it really, like, if he's back by the playoffs, that's one thing, and the Sixers probably don't stand a chance. But if he's out for even part of that first round series, then all of a sudden, I think the 8 seed looks more attractive than the 7 seed, where you're probably getting a date with the Boston Celtics, who have just had the Sixers number throughout Joel Embiid's entire career. They're just drawing dead in that matchup. But I mean, also from the Sixers side, right? Like, Paul George is coming back this week from his 25-game suspension. So barring an injury in the next couple weeks, he should be healthy for the playoffs. Joel Embiid has been out for a while now with a oblique injury. They briefly upgraded him to doubtful ahead of the Kings game, then downgraded him, didn't even bother with that charade this time. So, like, I think he will be back by the playoffs. It seems like he is making progress, but he also has not played ball in a while. And typically when he has a long layoff like that, needs some time to shake off rust. Tyrese Maxey is out with a finger injury at least until around the end of the month. We don't know if he will be back for the playoffs. Kelly Oubre is also out with an elbow injury. Like, it is just their entire starting lineup, other than BJ Edgecombe right now, is hurt or out with respect to Paul George. So, they could be like the mythical 9 seed that no one wants to face in the playoffs if they go in and win 2 games in the play-in tournament. But I'm skeptical that we're going to see full strength Philly again this year. Like, they said, Oubre and Maxey will be reevaluated. They did not say they will definitely be back at that time. So, I mean, luckily, like, the 5 teams at the bottom of the East are bad enough that they are not going to fall out of the play-in tournament entirely. But, the other teams in the mix for the play-in, like Orlando, Miami, Atlanta, Charlotte, all of those teams have been playing really well as of late. So I'm not convinced at all that the Sixers even make it to the playoffs this year. They'll be in the play-in for sure. Can't guarantee that they're getting the 8 seed or the 7 seed, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, my buddy Tony in the chat points out that Philly has 2 of the worst contracts in the league, and yet their future is still very bright.
Yes.
As Harry said, they have their backcourt of the future. Just speaking for the Pistons, not on behalf of the Pistons, but as a Pistons fan, in the last game and a half, it's been kind of interesting to see them sort of recalibrate what the team might look like without Cade, not just for a couple games here, but potentially for part of a postseason run, what have you. The Sixers, it's hard for them to recalibrate just because there's always been guys hurt. So I'm curious who's going to have to step up on the Sixers. You know, they've got some interesting guys. You know, they've got VJ, obviously, Justin Edwards, Quentin Grimes, Barlow. Who are you looking at specifically?
Yeah, I think VJ, just in terms of like, this is his chance to be a primary ball handler, which we don't get to see a ton when Maxey is healthy. So like, you know, no matter what happens for the rest of the season, just using these games, giving him these reps to develop, I think will be very valuable going into the summer. It'll teach him what he needs to work on moving into next year. Because like, as great as Tyrese Maxey is, he's not a natural point guard. He's not like, a Chris Paul, where you want the ball in his hands every single possession. I mean, a lot of the focus going into the year was they wanted to get more off-ball opportunities for Maxey to kind of weaponize his speed, his catch and shoot ability. And they've done that at times, but I think there's room for growth there. So the more that they can get VJ and some of the other guys more reps to, eventually lead to, we're going to have this kind of, we're not going to have the heliocentric backcourt. We're going to have egalitarian backcourt where a bunch of different guys can handle the ball in any given possession. I think that'll be very valuable. Grimes, just again, like, they really just don't have a ton of guys who could score in volume right now. It's really just VJ, Grimes, and then like Campaign had a random 30-point game recently, which was
insane true shooting percentage, right?
Yeah,
through the roof. Unbelievable.
I think the third highest ever for a 30-point game or something like that. I don't remember the specific. It was the same night as Bam's game, as Bam's 83-point game. So it unfortunately got a little overshadowed there, but shout out to Campaign for his one.
It was a double-double too, right? He had 10 assists, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, he was balling made us forget about Jared McCain for one night. I would say Justin Edwards is a good shout because he really, hopes were like high for him coming into the year that he would be, they knew like Paul George and Kelly were probably going to start, but like they don't have a ton of wing depth behind those two guys. It's really Justin and then just a bunch of like power forwards masquerading as small forwards. And they really, like, Edwards has been so inconsistent, just really hasn't gotten the opportunity, I think, is the bigger issue. Like, I mean, it's similar to McCain. It's just Nick Nurse is playing all of his starters 38 minutes a game. So there's not a ton of, not a huge leash for the reserves. And now Edwards over the past couple of games is, just out of necessity. They don't have anyone else. They don't have any other healthy wings. So Edwards is getting to play through mistakes more and has looked more comfortable and confident, which I think is, a big development for them moving forward if that proves to be sustainable. So that's definitely the one guy I'm keeping my eye on the most during this stretch.
If you're unfamiliar with Justin Edwards' game, he was a highly rated prospect in Kentucky in the year he was undrafted. Him being undrafted is like kind of crazy to me just because he was valued so high going into that year. It just wasn't a great year and Kentucky was going through some stuff. And then he got undrafted. He started playing okay, but I think that's it. It's just he's a young player with a ton of talent with some flaws, and you just got to work it out. And we've seen as the NBA has progressed that as years go on, you can level up pretty high as long as you have the opportunity to play through these things. And he's a skill set that you want. You want a wing who can shoot. And I think that's exciting for Philly. And especially because Philly, now we're going to get into some of the decisions that were made, probably the most famous Philly decisions of the year at this point. But, and you've already mentioned his name, Jared McCain got shipped to the OKC Thunder for a Houston Rockets first round pick and some second round picks. Very similar, honestly, although the more value for him to the Pistons sending Jaden Ivey for Herter and a pick swap with Minnesota. Both of those picks are going to end up in like the high 20s or low to mid 20s, most likely. And those were both selling on potentially promising potential ball handler, but more combo guard players going through a pretty devastating industry. But it seems like the immediate impact of Jared McCain in Oklahoma City is a little bit different than the Jaden Ivey situation. What is the Philadelphia perspective on this whole situation?
Ooh, it's a loaded question. It's actually interesting. I'd say most Sixers fans are still just irate about it, and every time Jared McCain has 20 points in 17 minutes off the bench for OKC, we just get angrier. There's starting to be like a hipster counterculture of like, actually, this trade was fine, and I think you kind of have to separate it in two ways. Like the compensation that they got for him, 1 first-round pick and 3 future second-round picks for a guy that probably tops out as a bench guard in Philly, like he was not going to jump over VJ or Maxey. So at a certain point, like I had been alluding to it leading up to the trade deadline, that like they were probably going to have to trade him at some point. I did not think it was going to be this year's trade deadline, but I thought maybe at some point they like look to use him as a sweetener with Paul George and trade for like either their next star, which I think would be a terrible idea, or trade those two guys, break them apart into like 2 or 3 middle tier, but like decent contracts that, abandon the 3-star model entirely, just go 2 stars plus depth. I thought that could have been a viable path moving forward. They chose not to do that, obviously. So like the compensation, if you're assuming that Jared McCain is not going to become an all-star, is reasonable for that. Like, and Daryl Morey said that, like, that is the compensation is a starter on a good team, and he was not going to have that role. So, like, he famously said after the trade deadline that they sold high, and people have been throwing that back at his face for the last 6 weeks. But it's very possible, at least, that from a pure value perspective, they did fine in that deal. The problem is that they have this history in recent years of ducking the luxury tax. They go into the season over the luxury tax, but like not far enough over that we can't get creative at the trade deadline and get under it. Last year, they spent 2 second-round picks to salary dump KJ Martin, who was on effectively an expiring contract at the time, so they could get under the tax. This year, they do McCain. They get Paul George gets suspended. They get almost a $6 million credit against the luxury tax. So then they're only like 1.3 million over going into the trade deadline. And everyone was like, oh my God, well, they're going to do it. Just how are they going to do it now? Embiid, a couple days before the deadline, literally goes to after a game, is speaking to reporters and says, we have a history of ducking the tax. I hope we don't do that this year. I hope we try to improve the team. I really like these guys. I think we have a chance. And then they do that. And the vibes have just been absolutely rancid ever since. Deservedly so. I mean, it's just a slap in the face to the entire team. Like it is a vote of no confidence in this year's team that you are taking away Jared McCain, who could have been useful, especially, the hilarious thing is that Maxey gets hurt shortly after they make this trade, and McCain would have actually gotten a ton of run right now. And, he very easily could have been putting up similar numbers and maybe boost his value. Maybe you flip him this offseason and all of a sudden you're getting even more than you did. So yeah, I would say most people are still frustrated and just more, it's less about McCain specifically, and it's more just about like how the Sixers ownership has approached this team and the luxury tax in general. And like, it just reflects an unseriousness about winning that, I think it was kind of my Joker moment personally was the KJ deal last year. Like when they did that, I'm like, you seriously spent 2 second-round picks just to get off of this contract? Like that is such a egregious waste of resources. And I wrote like a 1,500-word article on Liberty Balls about it. Like a lot of people in the comments like calling me crazy. I'm like, do you not like 2 second-round picks? You get you a rotation player now. Like that's not nothing. People are just like, oh, it's a pick in the 40s. Who cares? You're not going to get anything. That's fine. But like, how many guys in the last year or two have been flipped for 2 second-round picks, 3 second-round picks? It's, Dennis Schroeder last year, Dorian Finney-Smith last year. I know there are a bunch of guys this year as well. Like that's just the asking cost for a decent player, a decent rotation player at the trade deadline. And they just pissed it away. So like, if you're going to combine the two moves, okay, now they got 1 first-round pick and 1 second-round pick for Jared McCain, and so they could luxury tax dump KJ Martin.
They got to save that money to fund Daryl Morey's next musical. I sold high. Can't wait to see that hitting the stage, dude.
Yeah, I understand that on paper the value is not bad. There's just like a couple things about it that I think sting extra hard. Is the fact that when a rookie guard is that efficient, even if their ceiling is bench guard, obviously he'd be valuable now. And then just the fact that OKC gets him, and I think just given all the players on that team, he's, as you pointed out, like he's open a lot. Like he's open and he's taking shots and making them. And so it's just, I hate that someone that another team is given OKC a gift on a chill, cheap contract for a little while, especially because they're going to have some contract issues soon. So it's just like how sometimes, like, I feel like the Lakers used to be that team where teams just like give them shit, and I'm just like, why let them get better? And it's we'll see. Time will tell. We'll see what that pick becomes. But and also I just think Jared McCain is interesting, like off court too, and just has social media presence, and I think will sell jerseys, and just like is a brand and a person and just sort of a unique player in this league already. So we'll see how this ages. Harry, what do you think?
I completely agree with everything you say. Like, if you think about it as more than just like the basketball quality, what he's bringing to the court, which is already good, like legit good. The dude's a lotto pick.
Solid assist to turnover ratio, by the way, in Philly, less so. Okay.
And the value of depth players. I mean, look at the Pistons. The Pistons are winning games without Cade because they have depth. OKC has depth. The San Antonio Spurs, one of the best teams in the league, because they have depth. I think teams are finding more and more that having this many guys who can play, especially before expansion teams come on and thin out the herd even more, is important to take advantage of while you're here. But I do think teams are kind of slow on the uptake of, like, you got to market your team properly. Like, if you're going across so many different streaming platforms and no one has jobs, so no one can afford to like watch this anyway, so a ton of people are trying to watch it on the internet, take players that make your team likable. Why would you not want to be a liked team? And if your team is Philadelphia, you got to win people over because they're a tough crowd. They have a history, all the fan bases, like, and that's good. I just think it's good. I think it's important. And I think especially if you're a billionaire or multimillionaire or whatever, and what you're showing is that you care more about saving money than putting a good product out there in the current climate, that's not doing you any favors or anything like that. And I think it's a bit of a shame. But at the same time, it does kind of open up the future, and like this draft pick could be good because this draft is going to be good. We'll see what NIL does to this draft class, like how many people go out, because I mean, would you rather get picked 30th or maybe get picked 10th next year, 15th next year? Who knows how it'll be, but the amount of players that are valuable this year in the draft is awesome. It's a good draft. Players, I mean, Pistons fans, like we said, we had that swap. You got to be monitoring what's going on with Minnesota. You don't want them to lose too many games. They dropped to 19. You don't get that pick swap anymore. But having a player at 20 instead of at 30 is going to be a huge deal in this draft and could be an immediate contributor to this team. And both of these teams, Philadelphia and Detroit, are looking to plug some holes in their starting lineup and, like we said, in their depth as well. So the pick could be valuable. Those seconds could be valuable. Shit, you could turn that into somebody. We just talked about the value. Maybe you guys could get KJ Martin back, bring it back.
Oh, my God.
For a couple more seconds.
Is he in the league right
More
now?
seconds.
Just the return on investment could be super hot. But another thing these teams do have in common is just that they're both so injured. We've limped around the subject going in here. And specifically, let's talk about this Cade Cunningham situation. Pistons are, I believe, 7-2 without Cade, which is like incredible, in all honesty, because he shoulders so much of a load for this team. And statistically, he's one of the best players in the NBA. Top, in many's minds, top 3, top 4 MVP candidate. And now seems like he's going to be out for the rest of the month, which means he's going to finish the season with 61 games, making him another player ineligible for the awards. Giannis is already out in the award situation. Jokic is 1 game away from being out in the award situation. Now Cade's going to be likely out if he misses 3 weeks at this point. He has to only miss 2 in order to get back. that could have an effect on not only voting, but it could have an effect on what players get into the all NBA conversation. And that could have an effect on money. Bryan wrote a great article about this for Forbes. If you were following, that focuses mainly on 2 Pistons players. So Bryan, what I want to ask you about, 1, how do you feel about the 65 game rule? And then 2, give us the breakdown on what kind of impact that could be. So I'm not like spoiler alerting your article too.
For sure. So you'll be shocked that someone who covers the Sixers does not like the 65 game rule. real newsbreaker there. I mean, I think we're seeing the downsides of it this year. I think the NBA put it in place. I think it was as part of the new CBA. So it went ahead of the 23-24 season, which is when they were negotiating their new national TV contracts. So I think this was their desperate attempt to convince NBC and Amazon and ESPN that we care about load management. We don't want stars sitting out. So we're going to bully them into playing 65 games, ignoring the fact that if someone suffers a legitimate injury for a month, there goes their all NBA chances. And I think, it seems like Jokic, knock on wood, is going to make it, like barring some sort of fluke injury in these last couple weeks. But it sucks that you have to like push through an injury. I mean, I remember Tyrese Halliburton last year or the year before was like he had the hamstring injury and he was saying like, I wouldn't be playing if not for the 65 game rule. But because of this, I'm going to limp through and be ineffective. And it sucks that you're taking the choice away from voters. Like if voters could decide, are 62 games of Nikola Jokic worth more than 70 from Brandon Ingram? I think every voter would say yes, but now they don't have that choice. And now it's like, all right, I guess Brandon Ingram is going to make all NBA because Steph is out, Giannis is out, like all of these dudes are out. Tyrese Maxey's another one. He's played 61 games. Yeah. If he doesn't come back from this finger injury by the end of the regular season, he's going to miss it. And he would, like Cade, I think was, pretty much on a glide path for his for an all NBA nod. It would have been his first. Kawhi is another one. He suffered the sprained ankle last weekend. I know he came back on Wednesday, but he's missed 2 games with it. I think he can only miss 1 more before he's ineligible as well. So, you go down the list, like of the all NBA teams last year, obviously Tatum and Halliburton are not going to be in because they missed most of the season. LeBron James is out. Steph is out. Giannis is out. Jokic is on the border. Kawhi's on the border. Cade might be out. Maxey might be out. Like we're already going through how many of the top 10 or 15 players in the NBA that are just immediately ineligible for all NBA. So it is going to have a trickle down effect. I mean, you're going to have to fill those spots with someone, and it's got to be someone who's played 65 games. So it's going to be, you're going to get into a situation where guys, all NBA in theory is supposed to reward the top 15 players in the league, or, if injuries knock out a couple guys like Tatum and Hallie wouldn't have made it regardless this year. Okay, a top 20 player might sneak into all NBA, but we're now moving into the territory where it's like a fringe all-star might make all NBA this year. And, most of the time it only matters for like career accolades. Looking back 20 years in the future, or 20 years from now, you'll look back and say, oh, this guy made all NBA. He must have been really great. Sure. Okay. Doesn't really matter. But there are a couple guys where it really matters a ton. And Jalen Duren is one of them. He's going to be a restricted free agent this summer. He did not reach an extension with the Pistons this past offseason. If he makes an all-NBA team, he will at least be eligible to sign a max contract starting at 30% of the cap instead of 25% of the cap. And just to put some context for the numbers there, the salary cap for 26-27, current projection is $166 million. So if he got a 25% max, it would start at $41.5 million and be worth $240.7 million in total over the 5 years. If he gets a 30% max, starts at $49.8 million, worth $288.8 million over 5 years.
That's so much money.
He would be, I looked this up the other day, that would be the highest contract in NBA history for a center. Jokic is currently the highest at 5 years and $276 million. And it would be the third highest annual salary, trailing only Joel Embiid and Anthony Davis, both of whom are on 3-year deals. So, that's like that. With all due respect to Jalen Duren, he's had an amazing season, very deserved All-Star. If he makes All-NBA, especially with the injuries, like I can fully understand it. I would be nervous about giving him a 30% max. And it sucks that the Pistons might get into this situation because of this stupid rule.
It's what's so crazy about it is maybe last year and a month ago today, 2 months ago, Mickey, roughly a year and 2 months ago on our podcast, we were having a discussion if Jalen Duren was worth a 4-year, $15 million a year contract. And now we're talking about $40 million a year on top of that, which great as far as talent development goes, because he's been spectacular, like truly nothing short of spectacular. Watching him play this year is a dream. It's like truly a delight watching his bag, watching his finishing around the rim, watching his defense. Incredibly awesome player. You want to reward a guy like that. He was fighting for upwards of high 30s at the beginning of the season, didn't get it. Now I think Pistons fans are just coming along to the idea like, okay, maybe he'll get like $40 million a year. Maybe he'll get $38 million a year, something like that. But you tack on another, what are we talking about? 17 million a year. That's a high quality role player on top of that you're throwing onto this guy's money, which really limits this team. And who's a player who's not spacing the floor, which is what they already have with Cade, Ausar, and Duren, who are the future of their team. So now you're really limiting your ability to do anything out there. And we've just seen a whole bunch. I mean, like the Memphis Grizzlies moved on from Jaren Jackson Jr. and his huge extension. It seems like teams don't want to be paying guys this much money. You don't want to be pigeonholed if you're the Pistons in this situation where it's looking like we're just starting to see how to properly build this team. Mickey, how are you feeling about the prospect of paying him this much money potentially?
Honestly, I'm just praying that Duren understands that if he's making an absurd amount of money, that it really hamstrings the Pistons' ability to bring in other talent that's gonna raise their ceiling even higher. And I used to think that Duren was the kind of player that isn't gonna get the Pistons is the best place for him, given his chemistry with Cade, their play style currently. I think I still think that to some degree, but I know the Lakers would love Jalen Duren. I mean, they can't pay him what we can, but I'm hoping we can arrive at a number that works for both parties, like 38, 40. Like Harry said, like a little over a year ago, we and a couple other Pistons content creators couldn't fathom a number like that, and we're really worried about his defense and lack of spacing. And now just sort of the dominance that we're seeing from him is definitely flipping the script. And kudos to him for betting on himself, and shame on the team for not paying him what he wanted when he wanted. We would have been getting off light.
There's no way. There is no way they thought all NBA was a possibility for Jalen Duren, right? Like he's on this most improved list that people are talking about right now. Last year, he had 4 total 20-point games last year. Like he's over 6 30-point games, 7 30-point games, I think, at this point this year, averaging almost 20 points a game.
22 years old.
22 years old.
Yeah.
And like, again, the dribbling is so much better. The passing is just as good as it was. The rebounding's sensational.
Getting to the line.
Oh my God. It's unbelievable. But to make that prediction is tough. So I think at the beginning of the season, if they'd signed him to like a $35 million a year deal, people would have been fucking furious about it. Me too. And it's a smart move to not have done it, because let's say it didn't work out. Right? Then you're tied to this center who's not a stretch center, who might be a defensive liability, who's incredibly limited. And again, you have Ausar Thompson, who I think we've seen in his absence is probably the second most important Piston on the team. The defense is just like, it's so otherworldly that it has affected the Pistons offense on top of it. If you have 2 guys who cannot shoot literally cannot shoot the 3, it's tough. You can live with 1. But 2 is it's a tough pill to swallow. Now 40, I can see at this point, 25% of the salary of the cap. I get it. That makes sense to me. It's just tough. Brian, as a Philly fan and as a guy who's watched Joel Embiid for the majority of his career. Last podcast, someone in our comment section said that Duren's ceiling could be similar to Embiid's. Do you see that as even a remote possibility?
Ooh, I mean, he would need to get much, much, much better as a jump shooter. I think that that's the most underrated part of Embiid. I think most people just associate him as like a flopping grifter, which is a deserved reputation. I can't say totally unfair, but he's also absolute butter from 18 feet, and and has improved significantly as a passer in recent years too. Early in his career, the Celtics would throw a double team at him and you just threw the ball away. He had no idea what to do. Now, he's had triple doubles. He's had games where he's racking up 7, 8, 9, 10 assists per game. But I think, the shooting would be the swing skill there that gives me pause. I think Duren, honestly, is probably already better rebounding wise and probably better as a screener too. I'd say that's a part of Embiid's game that he never fully embraced or developed because he was just so focused on getting buckets.
If I can interject real quick on the screener, I think that has been the most slept on improvement development for Jalen Duren over the years. In his first 2 years, he was called for offensive fouls all the time, setting screens. Now he's not getting those calls. I'm watching these screens. The screens are fucking awesome. And setting screens is an immensely valuable trait for big men to have in the NBA, because you want to switch defenders. You want to be able to slip past. You want to be able to get defenders to go under instead of over to allow the 3-point shot ability. And Duren's one of the best that I've seen in the league at that over this last year. So I just wanted to give Duren his flowers.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think you're spot on there. How often during when Rudy Gobert was in Utah, did we have to hear Utah fans talking about screen assists with Rudy Gobert? But it is, they were doing it to cover up for the fact that Rudy Gobert can't hit a shot outside of 5 feet from the basket and can't, even when someone a foot smaller is guarding him, can't do anything about that. That's a little more problematic than your screen assists. But, that is the well-roundedness that you want from a center. So I think if the jump shot improves, then maybe Duren can get to that tier. But I think he needs to get that if he's getting paid the amount of money that we're talking about here, because there just really aren't a ton of centers in that salary range. It's, Embiid, Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, Bam Adebayo, Chet Holmgren, but even Alperen Şengün didn't get a max contract. He got way less than a max contract. Jared Allen's earning he's on $20 million a year. Now I think he bumps up to 30-ish soon, but so it's kind of like running backs in the NFL, where you either have a superstar or the rest of the position is devalued to the point that DeAndre Ayton, former number 1 overall pick, the Lakers got him for $8 million a year for potentially for 2 years. And I know, Duren, you obviously you're taking Jalen Duren over DeAndre Ayton at this point, but are you taking $58 million Jalen Duren over $8 million DeAndre Ayton? Or are you, looking to devote some of your financial resources to other positions, especially with, as you guys mentioned, Ausar Thompson, he becomes extension eligible this offseason. Ron Holland becomes extension eligible next offseason. So that's kind of the compounding effect of this. You've got Cade on the 30% max. If you're paying Duren even 25%, but God forbid you're paying him 30%, then it's going to get tighter down the line once you have to negotiate new deals with Ausar and Ron Holland as well, to the point that I don't know if you'd be able to keep all 4 of those guys.
That's the only upside of Ron Holland and Ausar Thompson's offense being so fucking limited. Maybe you save some bucks on them. And regarding the centers being paid that much money, one of the names you brought up is Cat. And Cat, I think a lot of people are pretty frustrated with what you can do with him because he has limitations. Yes, he's probably the greatest 3-point shooting big man of all time. And he does have some awesome offense and he rebounds the hell out of the ball, but there's still flaws in his game that people look at that contract and like, Jesus fucking Christ, man, what am I going to do with this thing? So if you're going to pay Duren that much money, you need to have a plan that you make sure fully embraces what he's capable of and makes up for his flaws at the same time. New York doesn't have that same plan with New York. I mean, with their situation, because they have Brunson on the floor at the same time, and that just that offsets it defensively, right? The defense is the biggest problem. Now you have two guys who are important starters, who are defensive liabilities in the NBA. At this point, you can't do that anymore. So that, again, the 3-point shooting, the jump shooting question in general, who knows? As a plus with Duren, we have seen him shoot the mid-range pretty decently this year. Not very frequently, but I think the number is something like 17 for 39 on the season, if I'm pulling the number correct. It's somewhere in that range, but for a while, he was on a hot streak. So we see that potential. We see what happens. If they pay him that money, he's got to be worth it, is essentially where we're at. We're coming to the close on this last section, though. So, Bryan, I just wanted to real quick give me your breakdown of who you think is going to end up in the finals, how you feel the East in the playoff, and also very briefly, how you feel the East compares to the West in general.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but man, I'm scared of Boston. If I had to pick right now, I think I would pick Boston. With all due respect to you guys, like sure. I honestly think like any of the 4 top seeds in the East would not totally shock me. I would be most surprised by the Knicks just because they've been so inconsistent this year. Like some games they look like legitimate title contenders, and other games they barely beat the Brooklyn Nets. And it's like, I just don't know which version of this team I'm going to get on a night-to-night basis. Presumably they will lock in the playoffs, and maybe they'll make us all forget about this mediocre regular season, but I'm underwhelmed there. The Cavs, since they got James Harden, I think are just a much more dangerous team.
Also Schroeder and Keon Ellis. On the low, I think like just that backcourt makeover has been awesome. Overall. Sorry.
And Max Strus just came back too. Like they are running into the problem now where it's like, I think they need Jalen Tyson still in that rotation because he was so good for them this year. And it's going to be a struggle trying to find minutes for him if you're also trying to get Strus and Dean Wade. And as you mentioned, Schroeder, Keon Ellis, like it's a minutes problem at this point. So they have a lot to figure out, and I think that might trip them up, especially with Allen out right now. Like they just haven't had Mitchell, Harden, Allen, Mobley. I don't know if they've had all 4 of those guys healthy at all together. If they have, it's been very limited. So they're going to have to figure out a lot of that stuff on the fly, which is never great in the playoffs. I mean, Boston, just like I hate them so much. I just don't I don't understand. Like this was supposed to be the year. This was supposed to be the gap year that no one had to worry about them. And then they just completely surpass all expectations. They like apparently have been developing all these guys behind the scenes very well for this exact moment. And now Tatum comes back and looks like almost like his old self less than a year after tearing his Achilles. It's infuriating. So I believe they are like currently the favorite in the odds market. And I think that is a fair status for them. In the West, I mean, OKC is the default choice. It's certainly caught my attention how many times the Spurs beat them in the regular season and do seem to present some matchup challenges with them. So if nothing else, I hope we get an OKC Spurs series at some point in the playoffs, because I think it would just be, one, really fun basketball, and 2, like that is potentially going to be the NBA's next great rivalry. Let's start, you need playoff series typically to really build that. Let's get a move on. I want to start this narrative right now. The Nuggets are another team where it's like, if they're fully healthy, they're dangerous. They pushed OKC to 7 last year. They're much better this year. I mean, the addition of Cam Johnson hasn't panned out quite as they hoped. I think they expected him to be better than he was for them, but you get guys like Peyton Watson who took a big step forward this year.
Aaron Crush.
Yeah. He's been and he's coming back tomorrow. So
also shout out Tim Hardaway Jr. I think shot 7 threes last night, which was huge for Denver. Awesome game. If you missed the game last night, incredible Denver-Toronto game.
Yeah. So I think if I had to pick, it's one of OKC, Spurs, Nuggets. I think you pick Thunder by default just because, but I would not be surprised if Spurs or Nuggets made it there. Rockets, I have zero faith in. Lakers, fun story, but no, like I think it's one of those 3. And then Boston, OKC, man. Oh, I would pick OKC just because I can't stand the thought of Boston. It's too much.
To Boston's credit, I mean, they're a pretty big system team, right? The spam the three team. They also had Jalen Brown all year, and Jalen is no joke. He's proving that he's a legit number one option if he was the number one option on your team. Peyton Pritchard hasn't gone anywhere. Derek White has always been great. I think drafting older players like Baylor Shireman is like important, and you draft hard-nosed defensive guys like Hugo Gonzalez and Jordan Walsh. The Cada pickup looks sick.
We're getting mileage out of Garza.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's the big crazy one to me. And regarding OKC, San Antonio, OKC Detroit and OKC feel very similar as far as like play style and like team makeup goes. And San Antonio has blasted both of those teams in every game that they've played, pretty much. It just seems like that matchup could be very hard. And I mean, Victor Wembanyama is the craziest player in the NBA physically and like at a talent perspective. It's hard to get into. Mickey, how do you feel about Brian's talk?
Yeah, well, I'm glad we zoomed out. We got the finals POV. Purcell Gaines M2U in the chat was curious for that. So thanks everyone who's new in the chat. Feel free to like, subscribe, smash a button or two. That's always welcome. But no, I appreciate that. I think OKC is a really good pick. As boring as OKC and Boston would be, I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think just sort of what we're talking about and what I've learned so much this season, especially, and maybe everyone's already all over this, is just matchups and just how important that is. Just this whole, as you're bringing up, Harry, like how many teams the Spurs have just smacked, and yet it seems sort of like the Knicks have their number. Right. So it's just really interesting to see how these line up. And I'm curious what you think a Detroit Sixers series would look like without Maxey Embiid, and if both or Cade, and if both teams are fully healthy. Like what's the skeleton crew results, and what's the fully healthy somehow Embiid, Cade, and Maxey all come back. Stu comes back, and we're full strength.
Think hospital Pistons sweep the hospital Sixers.
The 8-man roster versus 7-man roster.
Yeah. As much as I want to see Campaign play in the playoffs, it's not going to end well. Full strength. I mean, I think the Pistons would still be fairly heavy favorites in that series, if only because even if Embiid goes into the series healthy, just something always happens to him in the playoffs. Like he gets bubble guts, or he breaks his face on him when he's 30-point win with a minute left. He's still in the game and breaks his face. And
I forgot about that.
Now he ruined another chance. I think that would probably be like, I would say Pistons in 5 or maybe Pistons in 6. It would be very Sixers of them to get, maybe they go down 3-1. Win in Detroit game 5 and then just get spanked on their home floor to have a nice embarrassment right in front of their owner.
It would be fun to see the Sixers down so many players. They actually have to bring in Andre Drummond's dog in an Airbud situation. he's already at the podium, so I'd love to see
dog.
Cute dog. All right, we got to close on that. Although I do want to give a shout out to Michael Dompier in the chat, who says when Detroit pays Duren that money, they probably have to keep most of their picks and hit on them, which is a great point, because then they're cost controlled and they have all their picks for the foreseeable future. So just maybe that Jaden Ivey trade actually really helps out this situation. If you can land an eventual starter, let's say it's Yaxel Lunderborg from Michigan, he becomes your Tobias Harris replacement. Now you got a starting forward that you got with this draft pick swap that you wouldn't have been able to get before and save some bread. On an older player as well, because he's not a very young guy, so that could work out. But Brian, I want to thank you so much for joining our show, dude. I really appreciate it. Tell the people where they can see your work and shout out whatever you want to shout out before we bounce out of this spot.
For sure. Thank you guys for having me. Happy to come back anytime. You can find me on Blue Sky at BTOPOREK. You can also find me on Twitter, but I am not tweeting there anymore. So you can follow my zombie. You can find my zombie account if you really want. Sixers stuff is on SI. General NBA cap stuff is on Forbes, which is what Harry mentioned. Some Pistons specific pieces lately gone up there. And then I got nothing really. I'm going on vacation Monday, so I do not have much coming out in the next week. But I'll be back in time for the playoffs or the play-in for the Sixers' sake. And I sincerely hope that we do come across each other in the playoffs. And then my only hope is that we get Pistons Sixers in the playoffs. Pistons win, and Tobias Harris walks off the court and goes, Paul George over me?
Can the crumble cookie marketing team is going to just have a field day with that. The ads write themselves.
The transitive Butler property. Bryan, we'll definitely have you back on if the Pistons match up in the Sixers, and we'll have you back on in general. So thanks so much for joining the show. And Mickey, we're going to close out this show the same way we always do, which is just by reading the acronym OOBH aloud, because that's how a horse would say it anyway. So as always, I've been Harry.
And I'm Mickey.